Carolyn Steinbrink, and today I'm interviewing Molly Winegardner. And I think we'll start off with how your parents made their money, what kind of jobs they had during the Depression.
My father was in the car business, which might have been a pretty difficult time to be in the car business, but so much of what he did was a lot of hard work, a lot of selling. And he worked every Saturday night. The garage was open until 11 o'clock because all the farmers were in there sitting around. And very often on Sundays, we would get in the car and we'd go out on the farm, and Dad would and the farmer would stand around and kick the tires, and Mother and I would sit on the porch with the farm wife, and maybe there were some kids, and we would chit-chat, and he would try to sell a car. Then they'd take a ride, and then the wife would take a ride, and then we'd sit around some more. And it was something that you had to do because, they just couldn't. People worked, and they couldn't always get to town. So, and I remember that Dad always said to Mother, "Do you have $1 in your purse? Buy something." And, $1 would get you a couple of chickens or something, but we would maybe buy something for delivery on Saturday when they came to town. We would have, some chickens or a quart of cream or something like that. But it was, it was our outing. That was our fun. I can't remember ever my folks hiring a babysitter for me and going out at night. If we went someplace, we went to somebody's house, and I went along and kept my mouth shut and sat in the corner, which was, or played with the other kids. But it wasn't, people just didn't do things like that. But the garage, this is my earliest memories of the garage, was a fascinating, absolutely fascinating place. In the back, not the front where the cars were and the people were, but in the back, there was the lift, what the lift is that goes, that my dad would put me on, as a little kid, put me on the lift and raise me way up, it just seemed like I was a mile high and bring me down. And those little creepers, that you lay, with the mechanics lay on their back, we'd just push around like a sled and just go all over the garage. And it was just a fascinating place. And my dad was a machinist, and he had lathes and did metalwork. And all the things that came off the lathes were little curls. And if he machined brass, they were little golden curls. And I can remember going down there with my friends, and we'd pick up those golden curls and try to stuff them on our dolls' heads. But the whole atmosphere at the garage was just fascinating to me. And I think maybe we spent some time down there. Mother and I may be waiting for Dad. I don't know.
Had your dad always been in car?
Yeah, well, he was a machinist, and then he was a mechanic, and then he had a Chrysler agency, and always had that Chrysler agency. So, and on Sunday, the other thing we did, that on Sunday, we very often went to Omaha, and to the Andrew Murphy Chrysler, where they shipped in cars, and Dad would pick up a new car. Mom and I would drive home in the car we went in. And sometimes then, we went to King Thong's to eat or something like that. But that was our Sunday outing. And those were things that were related to the business.
So did the Depression change that business a lot, do you think?
Carolyn, we were not, I was born in 29. And my mother said she was never even conscious that there was a Depression because that's the way they started out. I know Dad had to work hard to sell anything, and people didn't have a lot of money to buy cars, but, cars were cheap, cheaper. And, I don't know, all I know, he came home for dinner every night. He came home for lunch, or we called it dinner. He came home for dinner, and we had a great big whopping
This is
noon
noon
meal. And then we listened to somebody named Foster May, the man on the street, on the radio, and got the news, and then he went back to work. And he was usually home for dinner. So, but he worked nights and Saturdays, and I don't know, he was gone a lot.
And your mom?
And Mother she was a beautician. When she came here, she had the first beauty shop in Shenandoah. And she then went back to work. I think she sold that. But during when I was young, maybe 6, 7 or something, she went back to work as a beautician part-time for a lady, Mary Owens, who had and that was another thing. I, would go down there and sit around waiting for her, watch the ladies get their Marcells and their permanents and all.
Explain a Marcel to the people who might be
A
not
Marcel,
knowing.
I wish I had some pictures. We have many pictures of people in the 30s with Marcels, and it's a hairdo that goes like this. It goes in waves, and you did it with a curling iron, and it was an expert thing to do. And this is what my mother's specialty was, the Marcel. So when you see those girls in the 30s with that perfect wave thing that goes like that, that's a Marcel.
And where was your home in town here?
We lived on the corner of Sheridan and Center. If you can picture that, Sheridan Main Street and Center Street was a real central, kind of a central street. Was, well, of course, wherever you live, you think it's the center of the universe.
Sure.
But it was a busy corner in a lot of ways. People came down Center Street walking on Saturday nights. People came starting at 5 o'clock. People with baby buggies and little children, and they were all walking downtown. And people from Essex, the cars streamed up Center Street and turned the corner and went down Sheridan, going downtown. And yeah, it was kind of a central place. If you went out to the edge of the lot, you could see all the way downtown.
Sure.
And then to the north I walked up the hill to Central School. As you go north on Center Street, up a hill, and it was not that far. But you walked.
You'd have to go south on Center Street.
South, yes, south, yes, south on Center Street. And as you went up Center Street, the real estate improved. We had a really nice new little house. Now those houses are trashed nowadays. Now they're little stucco houses, but they're absolutely trashed. But it was a new house when we lived there, and we felt very lucky to be able to rent such a nice, new, up-to-date place. But we were right on the fringe of the neighborhood, because to the north, as you went toward the depot, the Wabash Depot and the railroad tracks, and to the east, as you went up toward the cemetery, those neighborhoods kind of went downhill rapidly from there on. So my neighborhood kids that I played around with were a mixed crew. There were a lot of other side of the tracks kids who were maybe more fun than some. And then right up the street there were a couple of Lakes that lived, and Earl Mays lived over there on Thomas, and Wolford's, and there, as you went up the hill, got to the top of the hill, it was. And by the time you got to the schoolyard, there were, big, really kind of mansions up there. But in our neighborhood, it was just kind of a mixed.
What kind of things did you do? And what kind of games did you play?
I don't. What kids I think usually remember. I remember playing outdoors in the summer, or maybe later and later at night, as it got dark, and playing. Well, it was hide and go seek, but it was punch the icebox, or something where everybody ran and hid. And being one of the littler kids, I often found myself hiding, and everybody else had gone in. I was still sitting out there thinking, nobody's found me. But it was, just a mixed group of kids, and some older, some younger, and.
During the day, if you didn't go to your father's car or to your mom's beauty shop, what kind of things did you do?
You're thinking back to when I was a preschooler.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah. And I really don't remember. I know that we had something that we called hired girls. And I can't remember that they lived with us. But I know that Mother I know we had one black hired girl. Where in the heck she came from, I don't know where she lived. Her name was Zia Henderson, and I think it was Zelia Henderson. And I know Mother paid her $3 a week.
Oh, my
And she
goodness.
came every day,
Uh-huh.
and she was more fun. It just, just hilarious. And played with me. I remember her really distinctly. And then some other kind of daycare people who were helpers. But I can't really remember how long Mother worked, or whether that was just a temporary thing, or what. But I imagine that in the summertime I had somebody around. But I don't know. We had as I remember, a lot of freedom to go, or I did. It seemed to me.
I think they did.
We played in the cemetery. This is something that, the other neighborhood that was up by the cemetery. We played in the cemetery all the time, on the tombstones and all around, and, in that the old mausoleum thing, if it was happened to be open. And nobody ever came up there and said, get out or go home or you're not supposed to be here. The kids, we just played up there. And, the tombstones were kind of vaguely building-like, so you could pretend and ride on them and run around. And the road, that diagonal road that goes from the gate up to the circle, was enough of a slope that there was a lot of coasting, and very few people had a bike, or even a trike, but a lot of kids had a wagon, a coaster wagon that two or three people could sit in the coaster wagon, and they, steer it down this. It was dangerous, and scooters, a little scooter was just a terrible thing to try to ride, but it was a challenge, and so kids were up there coasting down that and around the circle. And as I remember, the big deal was to be able to go around the circle on a bike, lickety-split with no hands.
Oh.
And it was brick, so, everybody fell left and right. But it was kind of I admired the daredevils because I wasn't really one of them. But the thing was that no one ever seemed to pay any attention to us or butt into what we were doing. It was just a kind of a freedom. And Carolyn, the schools, after hours, when I see these schoolyards all fenced off and with all this protective stuff, dinky-winky little, toys that the schoolyard was open, and as soon as the teachers left at 5 o'clock and got out of your way, everybody went back up there at night, or in the summer. You went up to the schoolyard and played any way you wanted. Go down the slide standing up on a piece of wax paper, or just whatever you wanted to do. And, they had dangerous equipment. The teeter-totters were nothing but like a 2x12, huge plank that would just knock your teeth out. And some of them had a little dinky iron handle that was dangerous too. But the whole point was to bang around and knock the other guy off.
Do you recall anybody being seriously hurt?
I don't recall anybody being very serious. I recall a boy named Dean Johnson, who not during after hours, he just was running in the schoolyard and fell down and hit his head and had a concussion and died. This was in maybe 5th or 6th grade, but he wasn't doing anything. He was just running. But when I think of the kids that rode their, on those teeter-totters that didn't have a handle on them, people would ride their bikes, lickety-split up, and down either down the other side or off the other side before the thing got down, and I don't know, just ridiculous stuff, and nobody came to say that's not a good idea. So it was just.
Why do you think that is different now?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't pay too much attention to what my kids did. They played in in Macomb Park all the time, and I didn't pay too much attention, but my daughter, just had a different idea. She was just very protective of her kids. They were always supervised. And she lives in a small town too. But it's a different attitude.
Yeah, it
toward,
is. And I think that perhaps it's the news coverage that makes us so aware of
yes,
of dangers that in the past people were not so aware of those.
But you know, it makes
was just a whole different life.
A bunch of wimps. And for one thing, you know, we all walked to school and walked home for lunch.
Oh, yes.
And, you know, I'm so happy that I had that bone-building exercise when I was young.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Because you walked uphill up the brick sidewalk from our house to the school in a woolen one-piece snowsuit that when it got wet weighed about 15 pounds, and big buckle overshoes. And, you know, you walked to school and you put all that stuff on and walked home for lunch, and then you walked back up there, and it was a different than being picked up on a school bus and guarded. So.
You mentioned the depot. Do you have memories of hobos?
Well, my mother fed, she called them tramps. She fed them, and I think it was because she was raised in Kearney, Nebraska, which was a big railroad town, and her parents had a little dairy, and so they had a lot of work to do, lots and lots of chores. And my grandma, fed tramps. They came regularly, and they did a day's work, and she fed them on the back porch, and it was part of their bringing up that you fed the needy, but he got a little work out of them too.
Yeah.
But Mother fed tramps occasionally when they came to our door, and they always sat on the back porch, or if the weather was bad, she let them sit on the basement stairway, and they ate, and then they tried to do something. She had to kind of manufacture something for them to do because she didn't have that much work, you know. But I remember a little guy. He just stuck in my memory. A little tiny man with a real red runny nose, just sickly. I mean, obviously sickly. And she fed him, and we had a brick sidewalk, and there was always grass, and she told him he could go out and pick grass out of the sidewalk. And I sat with him and talked to him. You know, he was just kind of my size, and we talked about where he'd been, and you know, I think back of that poor little man. He was sickly, he was hopeless, with no place to go, and just where did he go? I don't. It was real sad to me, but he was kind of cute and real childlike, I would say.
What kind of clothing did you wear? Do you remember
Well,
anything different?
The girls all wore dresses, and with considerable ironing that went with them, I'm sure, because from pictures. And in the wintertime, some long stockings that came clear up, and I think there was a little, I don't know, like a little garter belt or something, but long cotton stockings. And, Mary Jane's, and a lot of hair curling. And I know that from pictures that my mother sat and finger curled my hair, like Shirley Temple. You know, and you put something on it, and then you sat by the stove until it dried, and then by the time you got to school, it all fell out. But it was you see cute hairdos. Whenever you see those girls with those little Shirley Temple, that's the way, or done up on rags. You know, they were, but nobody had, you know, just a short haircut.
Were any of your clothes made out of flour sacks?
No, I don't know where my clothes came from. I think they were purchased.
Okay.
But I know I had some pajamas that Mother made out of flour sacks. But I was a teenager. That was sort of a novelty. And during the war, that you know, you used those. No, we were not hard up, and I think we felt in that, especially in that neighborhood, we had a very nice house, very nice setup. It was new, and it had colored fixtures in the bathroom, sort of
Oh.
violet colors or something. And it was a bungalow. It was the latest thing. So, but I know that around the corner there was a girl named Mary Hayden, and I don't know what you know about the radio people, but the Hayden family was a real prominent radio family. And
Is that Charles Hayden?
It was Charlie Hayden was a little like a three or 4 year old, but the mother and father, they all sang, and the father gave the news, and they had several other names. The same guy would come on, but he had another name. But they worked all day, and the family had a program at 7:30 in the morning, and all the kids sang, and all the kids. But they lived in a house up and around the corner. And Mary was my age, and a fascinating, beautiful girl, but just head and shoulders above anybody else in maturity and responsibility. And I remember going up there, I was fascinated. They had a coal stove, a heating stove in the middle of the room with a bucket of coal. And they had a cook stove, and they cooked with cobs. And Mary, as probably 10 or 11 years old, was responsible for getting dinner, or feeding somebody. And I'm up there, and she goes out and gets a bucket of cobs and starts a fire and makes biscuits, which she gets flour out of a great big sack, and just threw it together, and without any measuring, she just knew how, and fired up this great big belching cob furnace, and was cooking something on top, and at that age, I didn't know how to do anything, but she was, and besides that, she was teaching little Charlie how to play a little ukulele, and he was, getting into the biz too. But she was just, they lived. Well, my mother said, well, they were hillbillies. She said they came from the hills. They were hillbillies, but that's the way. That's the way they lived. So, we were lucky.
Where do you think they got their cobs?
I
Did
don't
they
know.
buy
They
them
had there was
somewhere?
a cob shed. There was a big shed out in back, and it was just crammed full of cobs. So somebody, I think that wasn't
wonder if
maybe
you could-
not unusual.
No,
to
I
cook
don't
with
think
cobs.
it was.
It made a real hot fire in a hurry.
We burned cobs when I was a little girl, but I was on a farm,
Yes.
and
yes,
so they were
yes,
just a byproduct of the farm.
of the farm. Right,
So I
right.
wondered when you lived in town if you could go to where the
I
corn was
think-
processed and get the
I think
cobs?
I think cobs were something that were just available. Probably, by the
Just had to
truckload
go-
or whatever. Because, but I was very impressed with because that wasn't the way
That wasn't.
that wasn't our way.
Yeah.
So there were different people.
What do you remember about the weather? You talked about walking to school in the snow, which was uphill both ways, I'm
Yes,
sure.
yes.
What do you remember?
I don't know. I suppose it was hot in the summer. I know that we wore something called, I don't know, they were a little skimpy, kind of a shorts outfit that you wore. It had like a little bib. I mean, little girls wore these things. What do they call them? Sunsuits.
Oh, yes.
Sunsuits.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, and we probably didn't know enough to stay out of the sun. I'm sure. That was we should have spent more time with more sunscreen. That as far as working, I can't remember doing much around the house to help Mother.
You didn't
Little.
have to make the biscuits.
No, I didn't. No, I was not.
Do you think your family had to make any changes because of the economy?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure that my mother would never have worked because Carolyn, it was kind of not a good thing for a woman to work, and I think you swallowed your pride if you had to go to work. They weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
When you got married, you quit work, and that was the end of it. And so I'm sure that that was something for her, you know, to have to do that.
Yeah.
Mm. But that's about all that I can remember. I don't remember being, you know, being strapped. We were never spendthrifts, and we always had a car, which other people didn't always have a car, but we always had cars. Maybe we just had one, or maybe we went to the garage and got one. That was the usual thing. We didn't know whose car. We didn't. We'd go downtown with this car, and Mom would forget what kind of a car she had because she just got one from the garage. And sometimes I remember we having to wait till 5 o'clock till all the cars were gone. Go down and see what was left on the street. We just had kind of generic whatever was left over. We drove.
Did you have used cars, or were
Oh
they?
yeah. Oh, I'm sure we drove. Yeah, Dad drove a spiffy car, which was the demonstrator.
Sure.
And that was always the late model, and that's who, you know, he took people for rides and demonstrated what they would do. But no, we just had leftovers or whatever.
Yeah. What about Christmas? What do you remember about?
We didn't have any family around here. We had no family. And so Christmas, I don't remember too much about it. A celebration, I'm sure we were home. And I'm sure, you know, I can remember big things that I got for Christmas. But it was not a big memory to me, like it would be more to my kids, who had, there were more of, I was an only child till I was 12, and so it was just us. And we just didn't have any relatives or anybody around. Although we had, you know, a lot of relatives in Nebraska, and we did go, you know, every summer, maybe twice, we went out to Kearney, which was where I had many cousins, and, you know, a farm life, and a completely different life out there. So, no, I think we were probably isolated in a strange way, because most people in Shenandoah had extended family,
right here.
and we had none whatsoever.
So how did your family get here?
I don't know. Well, my mother was going to beauty school in Omaha. She was young, and there were some women in town, and Mrs. Farmer, the original Mrs. Farmer, and somebody else decided they should have a real beauty shop. Not just people fixing hair in homes. And so they went to Omaha, and they hired Mom just out of beauty school, and they set her up in a little beauty shop in the Mizpah Hotel. It was a little room right in the front of the Mizpah Hotel, and they kind of set her up in business, and she started in marcelling, you know, all the thing. But then the permanent wave machine came in, and I know she has told this on an interview. She has a very good interview on early Shenandoah. She borrowed $500 from her brother, and bought a permanent wave machine, which just came with a set of directions. And she said, you know, you could just burn somebody's hair off in a flash. It was a tricky thing, but she could give 2 a day. And people paid $15, which Mom said was almost like 2 weeks' wages for these working girls.
Well, you said the lady that took care of you, that was paid $3.
$3, yeah. Well, $3 and board. But yeah, because Mom said that girls who worked downtown at the nurseries were, you know, made $7.50 or $8 a week. Well, anyway, Mom just piled up money. And she paid her brother back, and she had enough. She bought a car from Dad, so that was how they. That's how they got together. And I don't know how Dad came here. He was in business with somebody, an Ed Christ, who had some kind of an agency. And I think Dad came to work as a mechanic, and then took over from him. So yeah, I don't know.
Did you do anything special for your birthday?
Kids had kind of elaborate birthday parties, as I remember. It was kind of a social thing. And, you know, I don't remember anything about the parties, but I there was a little scrapbook of invitations to people's
Mm.
parties. Some of the kids, I don't even remember who they were, but or write-ups in the paper about little
Yes.
little kids' birthday
Uh-huh.
parties that were kind of funny. So I guess, but I don't remember that much about birthday parties,
Uh-huh.
or that they were big events or what.
Yeah. What did you do you remember about school?
You know, Carolyn, not much. I really don't. But you mentioned singing.
Uh-huh.
Singing was a group activity. We didn't have a music teacher that I ever remember. And maybe our teacher couldn't sing worth a hoot. But we had these songbooks, and all through grade school, you had a period of time when you sang. And all these wonderful old songs that are still, permanently in your head,
Uh-huh.
were from that era. We sang all these songs, a lot of Stephen Foster songs, and
Mhm.
but they were standard American and patriotic songs too. And also my mother's family was a singing family, and whenever we went to Kearney, her sister played the piano, and her brothers were good singers, and we sang mostly World War I songs.
Uh-huh.
But when I think, when we were out there in the 20s, World War I
Just was
was
over.
just over,
Uh-huh.
so that's what they sang, was all those World War I, and an old standard song.
Do you think the time that you sang at school might have been like at the beginning of the day or the beginning of the afternoon?
I
You
don't
don't
remember
remember.
anything about it. I remember that I suppose we were supposed to be learning to read music. Maybe that was the point. Because I don't remember anybody. I don't remember being instructed. I took piano lessons when I was fairly young,
Mhm.
so I could read a little music. But no, I just remembered all those songs that we sang, and we sang them enough times
Oh,
that
sure.
everybody that you knew.
Did
them.
somebody play the piano while you
I
sang?
don't think that anybody necessarily played the piano.
Uh-huh.
Maybe some of the teachers played the piano, but I don't think they all did.
And did you do this just in your individual classroom?
In the individual classroom, we did this,
Uh-huh.
and then I'm sure we had, a big assembly at Central. There was a great big room
Yeah, they had
that
an
we went
auditorium.
in. Yeah, and we maybe did some of that singing in there.
Did you have like a Christmas program?
Don't remember.
You don't remember those?
No.
About how
No.
many kids would have been in a classroom?
I'm thinking a room full. Maybe 20,
20.
maybe 20,
How many?
24, and there were no other teachers. I mean, that you had your teacher,
Uh-huh.
but there was no art, music, or
Sure.
anything like extra like that.
And how many like first grades do you think you had?
Oh, just one.
Just one.
Yeah, there was
Okay.
just one class. Of course,
Uh-huh.
they had 4 schools,
Uh-huh.
and
And they went first through eighth.
kindergarten.
You had kindergarten.
Kindergarten was there
Oh,
too.
okay.
Mhm. Yeah, kindergarten and through 8th.
Okay.
No, through 6th. Then we went to junior
Oh,
high.
that's right. You had the
Yeah,
other building.
the old junior high
Uh-huh.
building.
Uh-huh.
Mhm. So, and there was there was a certain prestige in Forest Park. Forest Park was the better neighborhood. That's
Oh.
where the smarter kids went. And then Central was, sort of a second,
Mm-hmm.
and then Lowell was, was not the place to go, and Broad Street was, well, so. But I remember this was built into Shenandoah.
Uh-huh.
Where did you go to school?
Uh-huh.
And Forest Park was the school
What was
where,
the place to go?
yeah, was the place to go.
Can you think of anything else that you
No,
That we
I
haven't
really can't
touched on?
think of anything in the. No. And getting out of the 30's, because these are just kind of impressions from, because I was 11 years old when the 30's ended,
Mm-hmm.
so that was when our life changed, And we moved out of that neighborhood, so
Oh, you did?
those are my childhood memories.
Where
of
did
that
you
neighborhood.
move then?
Then we moved down on 7th Avenue, down by Forest Park.
Uh-huh.
So that was a different
Uh-huh.
place, a different.
And that's,
Okay.
then that
And
would have
that-
been
and
the
that's-
war years, the World War II.
Yes, and
would
I
have come
think
pretty soon,
I think I was maybe in 8th grade when we moved down there, or 7th or 8th.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and then a whole different.
Yeah.
Then wartime.
Whole different era.
Impressions.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, well, this has been interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I've enjoyed thinking too.
Oh, yes. You made me do some too. So
Yes.
thank you.
Oh well, you're so welcome. This was fun, and thank our
Yeah.
cameraman over there.